there I am. I came right back, and I'm still talking about David. And the Philistine drew near morning and evening and presented himself 40 days. He was teasing the other army for 40 days. And Jesse said unto David his son, Take now for thy brethren an ephah of this parched corn, and these 10 loaves, and run to the camp to thy brethren, and carry these 10 cheeses unto the captain of their household, and look how thy brethren fare, and take their pledge. He's going to go feed his family. Now Saul and they and all the men of Israel were in the valley of Elah fighting with the Philistines. Oh, how about that? They were fighting down there. And David rose up early in the morning and left the sheep with a keeper, and took and went as Jesse had commanded him. And he came to the trench as the host was going forth to the fight, and shouted for the battle. For Israel and the Philistines had put the battle in array, army against army. And David left his carriage in the hand of the keeper of the carriage, and ran into the army, and came and saluted his brethren. And as he talked with them, behold, there came up the champion, the Philistine of Gath, Goliath by name, out of the armies of the Philistines, and spake according to the same words, and David heard them. Now David finally heard this Philistine challenging somebody from the Israelites. I kind of think they weren't fighting yet. I think that was Jesse who was saying, your brothers and the armies are down there fighting, but they weren't really fighting yet. I don't think the other people back home knew about Goliath yet. And all the men of Israel, when they saw the man, fled from him and were sore afraid. And then the men of Israel said, Have ye seen this man that is come up? Surely to defy Israel is he come up. And it shall be that the man who killeth him, the king will enrich him with great riches, and will give him his daughter, and make his father's house free in Israel. And David spake to the man that stood by him, saying, What shall be done to the man that killeth this Philistine, and taketh away the reproach from Israel? For who is this uncircumcised Philistine, that he should defy the armies of the living God? David knew God. And I'll explain that a little further, too. I think this is going to take a while to read this. And the people answered him after this manner, saying, So shall it be done to the man that killeth him. And Eliab, his eldest brother, heard when he spake unto the men. And Eliab's anger was kindled against David. And he said, Why camest thou down hither? And with whom hast thou left those few sheep in the wilderness? I know thy pride, and the naughtiness of thine heart, for thou art come down that thou mightest see the battle. He thought the kid was just being a pain in the butt. And David said, What have I now done? Is there not a cause? And he turned from him toward another, and spake after the same manner. And the people answered him again after the former manner. He's talking about that big giant. And when the words were heard which David spake, they rehearsed them before Saul, and he sent for him. The king sent for David. Oh, I got so much dust in this desk. I didn't even clean it yet. And David said to Saul, Let no man's heart fail because of him, the giant. Thy servant will go and fight with this Philistine. David was a little guy, the youngest of the sons, but he had the biggest onions. Why? Because he walked with God. And Saul said to David, Thou art not able to go against this Philistine to fight with him, for thou art but a youth, and he a man of war from his youth. Now listen to the reply of David to the king. And David said unto Saul, Thy servant kept his father's sheep, and there came a lion and a bear, and took a lamb out of the flock. And I went after him, and smote him, and delivered it out of his mouth. And when he arose against me, I caught him by his beard, and smote him, and slew him. David fought a lion. You imagine that? Thy servant slew both the lion and the bear, and this uncircumcised Philistine shall be as one of them, seeing he hath defiled the armies of the living God. David said, moreover, The Lord that delivered me out of the paw of the lion and out of the paw of the bear, he will deliver me out of the hand of this Philistine. And Saul said unto David, Go, and the Lord be with thee. Now, where else did we hear something like that tonight, huh? Daniel in the lion's den. Daniel was living the right way. David was living the right way. I'm trying to live the right way. I fail at times, but God is merciful to me. He picks me up every time I trip. I haven't been able to do this kind of stuff, and I'm glad of that. Well, we just heard about two guys being saved by God. And Saul armed David with his armor, and he put an helmet of brass upon his head. Also he armed with a coat of mail. In other words, an armor. And David girded his sword upon his armor, and he essayed to go, for he had not yet proved it. He didn't try all this stuff yet. He never had any of this stuff on before. And David said unto Saul, I cannot go with these, for I have not proved them. And David put them off him. Because he didn't practice with any of that stuff. He didn't know how to use any of that. And he took his staff, which was a stick, in his hand, and chose him 5 smooth stones out of the brook, and put them in a shepherd's bag, which he had, even in a scrip. And his sling was in his hand, and he drew near to the Philistine. Got a bolo. And the Philistine came on and drew near unto David. And the man that bare the shield went before him. The giant had a guy that went in front of him, holding up a big shield to protect the giant. And when the Philistine looked about and saw David, he disdained him, for he was but a youth, and ruddy, and of a fair countenance. And the Philistine said unto David, Am I a dog, that thou comest to me with staves? And the Philistine cursed David by his gods. And the Philistine said to David, Come to me, and I will give thy flesh unto the fowls of the air, and to the beasts of the field. Then said David to the Philistine, Thou comest to me with a sword and with a spear and with a shield, but I come to thee in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom thou hast defiled. He was saying bad things about their God. This day will the Lord deliver thee into mine hand, and I will smite thee and take thine head from thee, and I will give the carcasses of the host of the Philistines this day unto the fowls of the air, and to the wild beasts of the earth, that all the earth may know that there is a God in Israel. You know, Israel still is today. There's a lot of people in Israel that they don't believe in the Jesus bit here. They're still waiting for their Messiah to come. It happened back when Jesus was walking around back there too, in the Old Testament, in the New Testament, after he was born. That's a whole other story. Like I said, there's so many stories in this book. And all this assembly shall know that the Lord saveth not with sword and spear, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give you into our hands. And it came to pass, when the Philistine arose and came and drew nigh to meet David, that David hasted and ran toward the army to meet the Philistine. And David put his hand in his bag, and took thence a stone, and slang it, and smote the Philistine in his forehead, that the stone sunk into his forehead, and he fell upon his face to the earth. Now, when you swing a bolo, you can zip a stone about 1,000 miles an hour in a relatively short distance. And if you're accurate, and he hit the guy right here, and it went into the skull. So David prevailed over the Philistine with a sling and with a stone, and smote the Philistine, and slew him. But there was no sword in the hand of David, just the bolo, or the sling. Therefore David ran, and stood upon the Philistine, and took his sword, and drew it out of the sheath thereof, and slew him, and cut off his head therewith. And when the Philistines saw their champion was dead, they fled. And the men of Israel and of Judah arose and shouted, and pursued the Philistines, until thou come to the valley, and to the gates of Ekron. And the wounded of the Philistines fell down by the way to Shearam, even unto Gath, and unto Ekron. And the children of Israel returned from chasing after the Philistines, and they spoiled their tents. They took all the goodies that they had. And David took the head of the Philistine and brought it to Jerusalem, but he put his armor in his tent. The Philistines' armor. And when Saul saw David go forth against the Philistine, he said unto Abner, the captain of the host, Abner, whose son is this youth? And Abner said, As thy soul liveth, O king, I cannot tell. He didn't know where he came from. And the king said, Inquire thou whose son the stripling is. And as David returned from the slaughter of the Philistine, Abner took him and brought him before Saul with the head of the Philistine in his hand. And Saul said to him, Whose son art thou, thou young man? And David answered, I am the son of thy servant Jesse, the Bethlehemite. All right, not going to read any more of that stuff now. All right, we've been doing this for a little while. I went through 3, 4. I only went through a little bit of the stuff. told you, there's so much to read and learn in this book. Listen, just like that, those few verses teaches you that God is real. You can know God if you diligently seek Him. He will reveal Himself to you if you are trying to live the right way. He will help you to do it. Now remember, I'm looking right at me in this screen here. I'm talking to me, but somebody else might have the benefit by listening to me. Read the scriptures. Put all of this Word of God in your mind, and He will reveal to you the truth. It is amazing how these stories come together in your head. As you read these stories, you can picture it and see it. It's amazing. I gotta stop right now. I think I did pretty good tonight, though. I feel comfortable about it. I hope I helped someone else. I know I helped me. I've been reading this book for over 40 years. And every time I sit here and read in it, I get pumped. I get renewed inside. And I can do all things through Christ, which strengtheneth me. The proper way of reading that verse. God sent His angel to protect Daniel in the den of lions. And David, being a small kid, was able to overpower a lion and a bear. Whoa, I wouldn't even try that, man. Even a small bear or lion tear you to pieces. That's having faith in God. And that's obeying your father. His father Jesse, who was in the lineage of Jesus, is the one that gave David the strength and confidence and the knowledge of God. Jesse was teaching him. The other sons, not so much, but this one was. And David became king. I gotta stop. I got so much I can talk about. I hate to stop, but I have to do it. It's almost 1 o'clock. About 10 minutes of. And I gotta go to bed. I'm tired. So, let me knock this off and shut this machine off. Good night.